Welcome to another deep dive. We are so excited to bring this one to you.
Yeah, this is going to be great.
This whole deep dive is brought to you by Pankaj Shrestha's production.
Oh, wow.
And we are so happy to be working with him. He's been a fantastic leader, really helping people get some clarity.
It's been amazing.
But getting to the deep dive, you sent us some excerpts from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, it's such a classic. I mean, so many people have read this book. It's been translated into like 36 languages.
Yeah, and I think it sold like over 10 million copies or something like that.
Huge.
So, sometimes when you have a book that's that big, it's hard to kind of, extract the most important stuff. So that's our mission today, to give you, the listener, the most important stuff from these excerpts that you sent us.
Right, like just the core principles so you can actually use them, in your daily life without feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly. So the book starts out with fundamental techniques in handling people. And the first principle is don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting starting point, right? Because we all kind of have this natural tendency to, like, point out what's wrong.
Right, especially if we're trying to help, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, when you criticize someone, even if you have good intentions, it often makes them feel like they're being attacked.
Right, they get defensive.
Exactly. And then they're not really open to hearing what you have to say. And there's actually, like, psychological research on this. Criticism can actually activate the same areas of the brain that are associated with physical pain.
Oh, wow. So, like, literally hurts.
Yeah, so it makes sense that people get defensive. So the idea here is to shift our focus away from blaming and towards understanding.
Okay, so instead of focusing on what someone did wrong, try to understand why they did it, right?
Exactly.
Which actually leads perfectly into the second principle, which is give honest and sincere appreciation.
Right, and that's a really important one.
Yeah.
But, like, how do we know if our appreciation is genuine or if it's just, empty flattery?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, Carnegie actually quotes the actor Alfred Lunt, who said that he needed nourishment for his self-esteem.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's such a powerful idea, right? We all need to feel valued and appreciated.
For sure.
And so when we give someone honest and sincere appreciation, it speaks to that deep need. It's different from flattery, which is usually just superficial and self-serving.
Right, like when you can just tell someone's like buttering you up.
Exactly. And Carnegie even uses the example of Disraeli, who was famous for flattering Queen Victoria. And it was so over the top that even she could see through it.
So it backfired.
Well, maybe not entirely, but it definitely wasn't as effective as it could have been.
Okay, so sincerity is key.
Yeah, totally. And, Carnegie also shares this really moving story about a teacher who saw something special in a young Stevie Morris, who later became Stevie Wonder.
Oh, yeah, I remember that story.
And the teacher specifically appreciated Stevie's incredible hearing. And that kind of specific, sincere appreciation, it can be really life-changing.
Yeah, it's like seeing the potential in someone and then calling it out.
Exactly. And then the third principle in this section is arouse in the other person an eager want.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, it's about putting yourself in the other person's shoes and understanding what they want, right? Not just focusing on what you want.
I like that.
Yeah, and Carnegie actually uses this fishing analogy. He says that you wouldn't put something on the hook that you like, you put something on the hook that the fish likes.
That's a great analogy.
So it's about understanding what motivates the other person and then framing your request or your argument in a way that aligns with their desires.
Oh, okay, so give me an example of that.
Sure. Carnegie tells this story about a lecturer whose rent was being raised significantly. And instead of just complaining about it, he approached the hotel manager and talked about how his lectures were bringing in more business, filling up more rooms.
Okay, so he focused on the hotel manager's needs.
Exactly. And the manager actually reconsidered the rent increase.
Oh, wow, so it worked.
Yeah, and it's like that famous Henry Ford quote, if there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view.
I love that quote. So basically, to get what you want, you need to understand what the other person wants.
Exactly.
Makes sense. So the second part of the book is about ways to make people like you. And the first principle here is become genuinely interested in other people.
Yeah, and it seems so simple, right? But it's actually much deeper than just being polite. It's about being truly curious about other people.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, Carnegie uses the example of a dog, right? A dog is so happy to see you, and it's not because it wants anything from you. It's just genuinely interested in you.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's the kind of energy we want to bring to our interactions with people.
So it's about being present and engaged, like really listening to what the other person has to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Carnegie mentions this study done by the New York Telephone Company, where they found that the word I was the most frequently used word in phone conversations.
Oh, wow. So we really are focused on ourselves.
Yeah, it's a natural human tendency.
Yeah.
But, Alfred Adler, the psychologist, said that the biggest problems in life come from people who are too focused on themselves.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's about consciously shifting our focus outward, towards other people.
Right. And Carnegie has all these great stories about how showing genuine interest in people helped him in his life.
Oh, yeah, like that story about the salesperson who won over a really tough customer just by taking the time to be friendly to the store clerks.
Yeah, I love that story.
It's like that quote, "We are interested in others when they are interested in us."
Oh, yeah. Who said that?
Publilius Syrus, a Roman writer.
Okay.
And it's so true. And that interest has to be genuine, right? It can't be fake.
Yeah, people can usually tell if you're being insincere.
Exactly. And there's this other really heartwarming story about Martin Ginsburg, who was in the hospital on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, he was feeling really down, but then this nurse came in, and she was just so kind and caring.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and she wasn't even supposed to be working that day, but she came in anyway because she wanted to help people.
Wow.
And Ginsburg was so touched by her kindness that he never forgot it.
That's a great example of how powerful genuine interest and care can be.
Exactly. And then the next principle is smile.
Okay, that seems pretty basic.
It is, but it's so important.
Yeah, I guess a smile can really make a difference.
It can. And Carnegie actually quotes Charles Schwab, who said that his smile was worth $1 million.
Wow, $1 million.
Yeah, and I think what he meant was that a smile can open doors and create opportunities.
I guess so.
Because when you smile at someone, you're sending a message of goodwill and positivity.
Right.
And it can really brighten someone's day, especially if they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
Yeah, a smile can be contagious, right?
Absolutely. And Carnegie even mentions this department store in New York that encouraged its employees to smile, especially during the busy Christmas season.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they knew that a smile could make the shopping experience more enjoyable for everyone.
So it's a win-win, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so the next principle is, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
Yes. And that is so important, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone likes to hear their name.
It makes you feel seen and acknowledged.
Exactly.
And it shows that the other person is paying attention to you, that they care.
For sure.
So, yeah, remember people's names. It's a simple but powerful way to make them feel good.
Okay, and then the next principle is, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Yes. And, this one really builds on the idea of being genuinely interested in other people.
Right, because if you're truly interested in someone, you'll want to hear what they have to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Carnegie actually tells this funny story about a woman at a bridge party who talked for 45 minutes straight about her trip to Africa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she never once asked him about his life or his interests.
So she was a bad listener.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it highlights how common it is for people to just want to talk about themselves.
Right, like they're not really listening to the other person.
Exactly. But when you actually listen to someone, when you really pay attention to what they're saying, it makes them feel important.
Yeah, like you're valuing their thoughts and opinions.
Exactly. And Carnegie tells this other story about a dinner party he attended where there was this botanist.
Okay.
And Carnegie didn't know much about botany, but he listened intently to the botanist talk about his passion.
So he was a good listener.
He was. And afterward, everyone thought he was a brilliant conversationalist, even though he barely said a word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Charles W. Eliot, the former president of Harvard, said that exclusive attention is a very high compliment.
I like that.
And then there's Edward Bach, the magazine editor.
Yeah.
He said that his ability to listen was the key to his success, even though he didn't have much formal education.
Interesting.
And Nicholas Murray Butler, who was the president of Columbia University, said that people who only think about themselves are hopelessly uneducated.
So it's about being curious and engaging with the world around us.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next principle is talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Yes, and this one goes back to that idea of understanding what the other person wants, what motivates them.
Right.
And Carnegie uses the example of Theodore Roosevelt, who was known for being a great conversationalist.
Really?
Yeah, and the reason he was so good at it was because he would always prepare for his conversations by learning about the other person's interests.
Oh, wow.
So when he met with someone, he could talk to them about things they were passionate about.
That's really thoughtful.
It is. And there's this other story about William Lyon Phelps, who was a professor at Yale.
Oh.
And he was talking to this lawyer at a party, and the lawyer kept talking about boats.
Okay.
And later, Phelps asked his aunt why the lawyer had talked about boats so much, because he didn't seem like the boating type.
Right.
And his aunt said, "Why, William, you're the one who brought up the subject of boats. You asked him about his boat."
Oh, I see.
So even though Phelps wasn't interested in boats, he had asked the lawyer about his boat because he knew it was something the lawyer was passionate about.
So he made the lawyer feel important.
Exactly. And then there's this other great story about Edward L. Chalif, who was trying to get funding for a Boy Scout trip.
Okay.
And he went to this corporation president, and the president wasn't really interested in giving him money.
Okay.
But then Chalif noticed that the president had a framed check on his wall for $1 million.
$1 million.
Yeah, and the president was obviously very proud of it.
Right.
So Chalif started talking to the president about the check and how impressive it was and how much it must have meant to him. And the president was so flattered that he ended up giving Chalif the money for the Boy Scout trip.
So Chalif found a way to connect with the president by focusing on something the president was passionate about.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay, and then the final principle in this section is make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
Yes. And again, that sincerity is so important.
Right, because people can tell if you're just trying to manipulate them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Carnegie tells this really simple story about a post office clerk who was having a bad day.
Okay.
And Carnegie went up to the counter and he noticed that the clerk had a really nice haircut.
Okay.
And so he just said, "Say, that's a great haircut you've got."
Hey.
And the clerk's whole demeanor changed. He smiled and he was much more friendly and helpful.
Wow, so a simple compliment can really make a difference.
It can.
Yeah.
And the point is that we should all try to make the people around us feel important.
Yeah, I like that.
And we should do it because we genuinely care, not because we want something from them. And there's this other story about a teacher who made a student named Chris feel important.
Okay, how?
Well, Chris was a really bright student, but he was kind of shy and withdrawn.
Okay.
And one day, the teacher decided to invite Chris to join her advanced class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Chris was so excited and honored to be included.
So the teacher recognized his potential and made him feel valued.
Exactly. And it made a huge difference in Chris's life.
That's great.
So those are the main principles from the first two parts of Carnegie's book.
Okay, so just to recap for our listeners, the key principles are: don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Arouse in the other person an eager want. Become genuinely interested in other people. Smile. Remember a person's name. Be a good listener. Talk in terms of the other person's interests and make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely.
That's right.
So, like, if you could only use one of these principles tomorrow, which one would you choose and how would you use it?
That's a good question. I think I would try to focus on being a good listener.
Yeah.
You know, really paying attention to what people are saying and asking thoughtful questions.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think I would try to give more honest and sincere appreciation. You know, really noticing the good things people are doing and letting them know I appreciate it.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Carnegie was really getting at, right? It's not just about learning these principles. It's about putting them into practice.
Yeah, making them habits.
Exactly. And he even suggested, like, having a friend or family member keep you accountable.
Oh, yeah, like they could call you out if you start criticizing someone.
Right. Or maybe they could give you, like, a little reward every time you catch yourself being a good listener.
That's a fun idea.
Yeah. Because it takes effort to change our habits, but it's so worth it.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day tomorrow, just think about how you can apply even just one of these principles to your interactions with others.
Yeah. And see what happens. You know, what kind of impact does it have on your relationships?
Right. And how does it make you feel?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, these principles are really about creating more positive and fulfilling relationships.
I totally agree.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into how to win friends and influence people.
Yeah, we hope you found it helpful.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.